Live. We'll make that happen. Oh, look at that. We are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the pre-show of today's Security Plus study group. I'm just getting things ready to go. Let's see. We have recordings going. So far, so good. I was troubleshooting earlier a problem. You turn these things on in the morning. I turn this on probably a couple hours before we go live, and just to make sure everything's working. And I've often thought, do I really need to go through that entire process Yes, we do. Because this morning I turned it on, and this left side monitor is the video output from my streaming server. So this is what I monitor to see how the streaming is going. This is what's doing the streaming. It's taking the video, it's sending it to YouTube, and then YouTube takes it from there. And this morning I turned it on and it started flickering and flickering, and then it went black. I thought, well, that's not normal. That's not what you want. So I started troubleshooting, and this is a HDMI connected monitor, but my video system within all these video things, especially all of the video inputs and outputs that you see here, are connected through a video format known as SDI, Serial Data Interface. Kind of a boring interface. It's not part of normal computer interfaces. It really is a professional video style interface that connects everything with coax. So it is not something that commonly has that type of issue associated with it, especially when it's been working so solid and I don't really move much cable. Once it's put in, it's locked in. But there is a converter that I use that converts it from HDMI on one side and converts it to SDI on the other side, so that the SDI is coming in, but for the monitor to see it, I convert HDMI and it goes in. So that was my problem. It was the converter, and then we powered it up, powered it back on, we were good. And that worked fine. And so far it's been solid, but I'm keeping my eye on it. I'm watching you. We're going to make that happen. So today is all about Security Plus, Security Plus, Security Plus, Security Plus. Anything security related. And boy, have things been security related recently, haven't they? We got a lot to talk about. I've got to close a door. I've got some echo in here. So I'm going to walk away for a moment. Bear with me, please. It probably was an echo that you did not hear, but I sure heard it. It probably didn't even come through the microphone just because of the type of audio setup we have. But I heard it, and that was enough. That was plenty. All right. Let's see what else we can do here. Everything else I think is ready to go. I've confirmed. We've got information and ready to go. The configuration of the questions matches the questions that should show up online. So I'm not sure if it will work out that way. Always, I seem like I go through all of this beforehand, and then we get into the live stream and something is not synced up. But that's just sort of the nature of doing a live event. But so far, I think we're in pretty good shape. I wrote all of these questions for today. I wrote them like a couple of weeks ago. So I remember nothing of them, at least not offhand. Once we get into them, I will, oh yeah, I recognize that question because I wrote it, but I just don't remember. A lot happens day to day. It is a little bit crazy day to day. All right, we've got a lot more to go through here. Folks are checking in from all over the place. If you have not checked in from all over the place, you should. We've got a map up that you can put your virtual pin in our digital pin cushion here, our digital map of the world. We got people checking in from all over the place. Some folks in North America. We've got Europe checking in. Malk is here. I haven't even seen him in the chat. There he is in the chat. There he is. I knew you'd be there, Malk. On a Friday, I know. What's up with that? Here we are on a Friday. Even folks checking in from Africa as well. So glad to have you here. Thank you for being here. We are coming to you live from our worldwide headquarters in Central Florida. So today, what is it? It's kind of nice out. If we look at the weather. Right now, 73 degrees. What's the high going to be today? It's going to be 77 in F units. Whatever that is, we will figure it out. So that is what we're working on right now. We're getting there. We're making it happen. Folks are checking in. I see in the chat room, you're in Florida, you're in Canada, you're in Germany, you're Connecticut, you're in Montana, you're in South Carolina. South Carolina, I could go for some barbecue right now. Speaking of South Carolina, South Africa's here, Argentina, more Floridians. Welcome, Floridians. San Francisco is here. Gosh, West Coasters, thanks for getting up first thing on a Friday, too. So thank you so much. We got New York and Texas. I was out this past week out in the western part of the United States. So I am just now back on what I think my time zone is. But that time zone tends to be different depending on what day it is, it seems, for me. So it's difficult for me to get out of my time zone. And then when I'm out of it, it's difficult for me to get back. I can't flip back and forth very easily. I think it's probably most people are that way. But that's sort of the way it goes. Yeah, some low country gold would be good on some barbecue. You folks in North Carolina, we need to have a conversation about putting coleslaw on your barbecue sandwich. I'm not sure what that is. That is a decidedly North Carolina, Charlotte thing. I guess maybe a little into the Rockledge area. Maybe a little bit down there. Maybe some in South Carolina. That tends to be where I focus. Oh, we could fight for hours over barbecue. We absolutely could. All right, today we've got a lot to do. I got 3 minutes to go, so this might be a good time to check. Cameras do continue to look good. My stream camera is fine. We've got things happening here. Okay, everybody's good. Everybody is fine. We seem to be in relatively good shape. This poor laptop that I've got here, I've had for so long. It is just a workhorse. It's an older Intel MacBook Pro. The keyboard is horrible. It was that one they had the problem with the whatever that was. It was, I forget what they called it, the butterfly keys on this. It was just a poorly designed keyboard. So unusual for the folks at Apple. They gave it a shot. And to their credit, they tried to fix it. They tried to swap things out. I never really swapped anything out because at that point I'd moved to a new laptop. But that's just sort of how it worked out. Okay, we got 2 minutes left before we get started. You can see the big clock on the desk is telling me, keeping things there. Let's bring that back up. There we go. And now we can focus on all the things we're doing today. So I'm thinking of swapping this out and bringing in a newer laptop, but it just continues to work. It just is a workhorse. The problem is after about an hour, it starts to, there's some type of heat that gets in here and it starts to flicker and make noise. It's one of those things. It's so old, but you know where its problems are. It doesn't really affect much. And it's only in the LCD, so it's probably an LCD cable that just needs to be adjusted. But you don't see it. So even if it's flickering here, you don't see it because the actual video output really is correct. It's not a video card problem. It's probably just a loose cable. Got to work on that. But I think the thermal, as it warms up, it moves just enough to create a problem. And I'm not even going to worry about it. We're just going to keep it moving. It's sometimes older technology that you're comfortable with is just fine. Even with its limitations, it's fine. We're just going to let it go and not deal with the newer, fancier stuff. Because then let's see. This is USB out, the video out. So I've got a DisplayPort connection or a Thunderbolt connection coming out, and it's converting into HDMI. Then that HDMI is converting into SDI, which is what you are seeing. See how easy it is to get this going? That's how it works out. That's what I mean. It's these older systems. Lead Badger knows what I'm talking about. An old laptop with an out-of-balance fan. Once it warms up, it balances. The noise works. That's it. That's exactly what I mean. That is exactly. Oh, look, it's 12 noon. It's time to do a live stream, everybody. Let's bring up our keynote. let's press go. Let's see if we get a green light. Right then, green light, please. There we go. That's what we want. Click, click, click. I think that's our cue, everybody. Let's do a live stream right now. Why don't we do this? Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March 2026 Professor Messer SY0-701. That is our Security Plus study group for the month of March. Thank you so much for being here. We have so much to go through today. This is our study group where I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA Security Plus exam objectives. We get to see just how much you know about some of these topics that are on the Security Plus exam. If you are here live, you can join us and participate live. This is not just me talking. This is an interactive event where you get to participate along with me. And if you're watching this on the replay, you obviously won't have this real-time voting that we're going to do, but you can still follow along with the things we're doing. You can vote yourself, and you can see how everyone else did. We'd love for you to join us on our live streams where you can do this all in real time. If you are on one of our live streams, you can join us by popping open a new browser window and heading over to the URL that is on your screen right now, professormesser.com/QA. That is the link that you have to go to. You just stay on that page, and as we present new questions to you, you will see those questions appear also. Speaking of questions, I have one for you. The question that we have for you is one from a previous study group. This is the only time you will see a previous study group question. All of the other questions today are brand new, but I like to do what we call our rewind question to make sure that you're able to get in and answer these questions online. The only rule we have, and sort of the standing rule for everything that we do during our study groups, is please do not answer any of these questions in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to answer using that URL that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. So the question that is our rewind question of the day is, a security administrator has identified all possible points of unauthorized entry on a newly built web server. Which of the following would describe this list? Would it be a responsibility matrix, platform diversity, journaling, input validation, or attack surface? That is your rewind question of the month. If you think you know the answer, again, please do not answer in the chat room. Instead, go to the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. There it is right there. And that's where you want to answer the questions that we will present to you today. Thank you so much. And by the way, we will come back to this question in just a moment. I'm not leaving you hanging. We're going to come back. We'll make sure that we answer this in just a bit. Thanks for joining us, though. Thanks for being here on our live stream. It is difficult to do an interactive live stream if you don't show up. So I'm eternally grateful for you being here. We have a lot to go through today, but I want to remind you that when we are not doing one of these live streams, we have a lot of information to go through, especially on our YouTube channel. Our entire Security Plus course is there. Every minute of every video, we don't hold anything back. So you can go to professormesser.com/YouTube to view all of that. Of course, wherever we happen to be on social media, I put links on my website to make it easier for you to get there. You can either follow the icons in the upper right of the website or simply go to professormesser.com/ the name of the place you would like to find us. So /X, /Instagram, /LinkedIn, /Facebook. You get the idea. So wherever you would like to find us, hopefully we are there and you can find us wherever that happens to be. If we're not on your favorite social media site, let me know. I always like starting up some new accounts and getting things running. Just send me a note on my website. There's a contact us link. You can always send me a message. Also let you know that the version of the Security Plus exam that we will be working with today is called the SY0-701. On the CompTIA website, you may also see this referred to as version 7, but it's really professormesser.com/ you'll be able to find us at professormesser.com. So it makes it easy to find the right version. Just look at the main menu of our site. We always have the latest versions and the numbers listed up there on that specifically that view of the world. SY0-701, we've got a release date. This was released on November the 7th, and we estimate that based on that release date, this will probably retire just after, maybe just over a year from today. So the important part to consider is that on May of 2027 is when this all goes away. So as you are here in March of 2026, you have plenty of time to be able to make it all the way through and earn your Security Plus certification. On average, it tends to take 3 to 6 months for folks to earn their Security Plus cert. So that gives you plenty of time for what you're doing. Also let you know that it's a single exam. There's a maximum of 90 questions you might get. Might be a little bit more to worry about if you are working on these exams and you notice you get fewer than 90 questions. That's normal. 90 is the max, but you could get fewer than 90 questions. The score you're looking for on a scale from 100 to 900, the score you want is a 750. That is an important consideration. There's really no way to reverse engineer this because every question is worth a different number of points. All I can really recommend for you is to always just answer as many questions as you can, as correctly as you can. The number will work itself out at the end. The exam is mostly multiple choice questions, but there is a list, a handful of performance-based questions you will get at the very beginning of the exam, and we will talk about performance-based questions right after this section. Also let you know that we've got a lot more study materials on our website to help you. If you're someone who's looking for a set of course notes, maybe you're looking for some practice exams, or you're looking for a downloadable version of our entire course that includes both our course notes and our practice exams, it's all on our website. Our success bundle is there. You can find out all about that, all of the different pieces that come with this bundle at professormesser.com/701SB. And if you like to watch the replay of this on YouTube, then you've probably seen the video, but sometimes you don't need a video replay. You just want an audio replay. And I distribute this replay in an audio format as well. So you can always go to YouTube to watch the replay, or you can go to professormesser.com/podcast and add this to your favorite podcast listening program. This is an audio only version. So if you're in the car, you happen to be working out and you just want to listen in, it's a perfect way to do it. Saves a little bit of bandwidth. It's very easy to keep and automatically download to your favorite podcast listening program by visiting professormesser.com/podcast. And of course, if you go to the YouTube channel to watch the replay, about a day after we are done, you'll notice that a series of timestamps will appear in the YouTube video description. Those timestamps are put there thanks to the hard work of my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. She's watching this replay right now, probably at 2x speed. Maybe I should talk slower, and it would seem as if she was watching in real time. No, we won't do that the entire bulk of the study group. Instead, we'll have her go through this, put those timestamps in there. This makes it so much easier to find the things you're looking for. You'll find that in all of our previous study groups as well. Thank you, Lori, for all that hard work. If you're someone who enjoys watching these and seeing that YouTube video description update, make sure you give Lori a heart or some type of hello in the chat. She's, of course, watching the replay of that go by as well. Also let you know that when we are not doing one of these live streams, you can find us over on Discord. We have our own Discord server with thousands of people registered who are studying for their A+, their Network+, their Security Plus exam, and others. There's also a lot of people there who've already taken their exams and can give you some advice. This is also a great place to study. You can start your own study room and be in charge of that study room at any time. And when everybody leaves the room, it automatically shuts itself down. It's a really nice system. It's one that you might want to use to help find other people that are studying similar things. You can find it at professormesser.com/discord. Eventually, you will need to take your Security Plus exam. And if you are in the US or Canada, you are also able to get a discounted version of the vouchers. Instead of paying full price over at the CompTIA website, what if you got exactly the same voucher, but you got it for less? That is one of the benefits of going to professormesser.com because all of our vouchers are already discounted for the folks that happen to be in Canada, US, or a US territory. Of course, all of the vouchers are there, but if you purchase those vouchers, you also get something that you can't get anywhere else, and that's a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook I wrote of some tips and tricks that I've accumulated through the years, not only of taking CompTIA related exams, but also taking other third-party certification exams as well. And I've got tips in here that you can not only use to help you study, but I've got tips and strategies you can use during the exam itself that could potentially get you some extra points. This is something included free when you purchase it with the voucher. This is something you actually can't buy the Exam Hacks ebook. It is only available with the purchase of a voucher or the purchase of one of our success bundles. So that's a very useful thing to have as well. Make sure you check that out at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go to this question again that asked, a security administrator has identified all possible points of unauthorized entry on a newly built web server. Which of the following would describe this list? Would it be responsibility matrix, platform diversity, journaling, input validation, or attack surface? Let's close our poll and see how you did. And you can see 85% of you say the answer is attack surface. Did we really get that right? Well, 85% is a pretty big number. So you folks did a great job on this question. It is indeed an attack surface, because an attack surface is a description of the different ways that an attacker could potentially get into this connection. So, for example, maybe in your house, you have doors, you have windows, there might be a basement entry. Those are all opportunities for someone to gain access to that place. So, same thing applies in the digital world. Is it an application code vulnerability? Is it an issue with the operating system? Did somebody accidentally leave the administrator password as password? These are things that happen all the time. And each one of these things is a potential for gaining access into this system. All of these describe the attack surface of that particular system. So that is exactly what we were looking for here. Was not the responsibility matrix. That's a very common matrix you might see associated with cloud-based services. Who's in charge of the operating system? Who's in charge of the data? Who's in charge of the application? That wasn't what we were trying to determine here. Platform diversity describes you having different operating systems running different versions of OS. That way, if you have a problem with a Windows issue, you know it's not going to affect your Linux devices. Journaling describes saving data into a temporary save area before it is permanently written to your storage drive, so that if you do lose power, you're able to recover that. You're not corrupting the data that you're constantly saving to a system. That wasn't what we were describing. And input validation is normally done by the developers of the application to take the input into the app and make sure that nothing malicious is being added into the app. In this case, the answer that we were looking for, and the one that 85% of you got absolutely right, is attack surface. That was the right answer. And those of you that are familiar with Security Plus, you have to know all of these different topics, not just the attack surface topic. So make sure that you make a note of anything that you might be a little bit weak on, so that you can go back and study those topics as well. You did a great job with this rewind question of the month. Well done. Let's now do some new questions. And our first new question of the study group is, just like previous study groups, a performance-based question. I mentioned earlier that the exam consists of two different question types. In reality, it consists of an unlimited number of question types. The bulk of the exam, most of the questions that you are going to get on your exam, will be multiple choice questions, just like the one we had, where there is a single question and there are 4 or 5 options to choose from, and then you choose the one that you think is correct. These multiple choices that are available. In this question, if you didn't know the answer, you had a 20% chance of getting it right. If there were only 4 answers here, you'd have a 25% chance of getting it right. Well, CompTIA doesn't want to give you quite such an advantage with all of these questions that they are providing. So what they want to do is give you questions that don't have that level of guessing that you can use. Instead, it's more of an open-ended question, or it's a question presented in a different format. If you can think of all of the different question formats in the world, it is basically an unlimited number. But you can think of it as maybe a fill-in-the-blank question, a matching question, a question where you have to put things in order. Maybe there's drag and drop functionality. There's a lot of different ways to ask questions on this exam. But one thing that I will tell you is a big tip, because people get very concerned when they don't know the style of question that will be presented to them. And I'm here to tell you that's not the worry. The worry is that you're not going to know the content. And as long as you understand the CompTIA exam objectives, really doesn't matter how they ask the question. So I have for you a new performance-based question of the month. And our performance-based question this month is a matching question where I want you to match the description to the technology. And you will notice that there are 5 different descriptions, but there are 8 different technologies. This is something commonly done on the exam, by the way, where they give you a different number of answers than there are questions, and you will have to answer the 5 that are there. That means there's going to be 3 left over. This is so that you can't absolutely figure out if you get 4 of them, then you've got the 5th one right. No, CompTIA makes it much more difficult than that. You really do have to read through all of them. So let me read you the descriptions, especially for those of you listening on the podcast side. The descriptions are: a spreadsheet is hidden in a JPEG graphics file. The next one is: a text message requests the payment of a non-existing traffic infraction. I think I've seen that before. The description C is: an administrator has confirmed the integrity of an ISO download. The next is: a mobile phone has encrypted all data on the device. And lastly, all manufacturing equipment is connected on an isolated network. The technologies that we have describing these are secure enclave, segmentation, smishing, root of trust, hashing, static code analysis, input validation, and obfuscation. Those are the ones I'm looking for, and I'm looking for the best description for each one of these. If you know the answer, or you think you know the answer, you can lock that in at the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please do not put your answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. Instead, head over to that link, professormesser.com/QA, and put in what you think the answers might be. You don't have to put in all of the words that are here. If you think they are already in order, you simply need to put A1, B2, C3, D4, and E5. There you go. That's all you have to submit. Makes it very easy. One thing I will recommend is keep in mind, remember the options that you chose, because once you submit them, at least in the past, you've not been able to see your submitted entries. I noticed they did a big update for March on our online interactive system, so you might see a few user interface differences. Nothing that's too dramatic, however. Should be relatively straightforward. Lock in your answers. Head over to professormesser.com/QA and tell me what you think these are. When you're working on the exam, especially Security Plus, there are a lot of acronyms. There are a lot of technologies in general. But one of the things that CompTIA tends to focus on is they want you to understand how these technologies are used. So if you see a question and that question has a technology name associated with it, it has symmetric encryption. You know, it's interesting to know what symmetric encryption is. And if you know that symmetric encryption has a particular meaning, but how do you use it? In what format, in what structure would it be used? So CompTIA wants you to go that extra step. They really want you to do that. So folks in the chat room, No Channel says it looks like the answers are staying after you submitted. Yay! They updated their interface so that you could at least see that on the screen as you're going through it. So I'm glad that's something that's been added recently. I really do like this online interactive voting type system, and they've added a couple of new features as we've gone through. So I plan on adding other question types as well as we go through some of the other study groups in the future. Should be pretty good. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's step through each one of these and see what I would have chosen for these. Again, the technologies are secure enclave, segmentation, smishing, root of trust, hashing, static code analysis, input validation, and obfuscation. And the descriptions are: a spreadsheet is hidden in a JPEG graphics file. A text message requests the payment of a non-existing traffic infraction. An administrator has confirmed the integrity of an ISO download. A mobile phone has encrypted all data on the device, and all manufacturing equipment is connected on an isolated network. Let's start with the one at the top. A spreadsheet is hidden in a JPEG graphics file. Did you even know you could do this? This is an interesting technology called steganography. Steganography is a way of hiding information within some other type of media or file. So a very common thing is you can hide a lot of things inside of an image without changing a lot of how the image looks to our human eyes. So it's a very easy way to send an image, but in reality, you're sending a spreadsheet. In reality, you're sending additional data that the person on the other end, if they know how, can extract from that image and then have the original data that they were working with. So in this case, you notice there was not an option for steganography on our technology list, but steganography is a type of obfuscation. Obfuscation is when you take something that appears to be human readable and understandable, and you make it a lot less human readable and understandable, but still maintain the data itself, which really does describe steganography for us. So if you chose obfuscation for a spreadsheet hidden in a JPEG graphics file, check mark for you. You got that one right. Next on the list is a text message requests the payment of a non-existing traffic infraction. If you haven't gotten these text messages before, you will. They seem to be everywhere. So it will tell you that you have a traffic infraction, you went through a toll, you didn't pay the toll, and you have to pay it right now online by clicking this button and giving us money. In reality, of course, there was no traffic infraction. It is not the government coming after you. It's some third party trying to take money out of your pocket, which means that this would be smishing. It's sort of like phishing, but because it's done over a text message or over SMS, the short message service, we often don't call it SMS these days, but short message service is effectively text messaging. And so instead of phishing, we call it smishing with that SM, describing the short message phishing, I guess, if you want to call it that way. We try to put that in there and figure out the terms of that, but that is a very common way to get you interested in a conversation, to interact with you. You've probably seen these other types of smishing attempts. I get smishing attempts on my phone that say, hey, are you coming over for dinner this weekend? I haven't heard from you in a while. How are things going? They're trying to get a conversation going that will eventually involve you sending the money in some way, I assure you. So my recommendation is to block and report, block and report, block and report. I think that's the important one. Smishing is what we were looking at because it's using SMS as a way to gain access to you and eventually to your money. Next on our list is an administrator has confirmed the integrity of an ISO download. ISO downloads can be big. They can be gigabytes in size. An ISO download describes an entire operating system or a single disk that has been collapsed or encapsulated into a single file format called an ISO format, describing the standard format that is used for all of these. It's a very easy way to transfer a very large disk in a single file, which makes it easy to manage. But it's so big when you download it, it would be nice to confirm that what you have downloaded matches what is existing on the original server. And a good way to do that is to hash the original ISO, post the hash on the website, and then once you've downloaded, run the same hashing algorithm to see if that matches what's on the website. And if it matches, you know you have downloaded an exact duplicate of that original file. So hashing is the answer here. Confirming the integrity of an ISO download, hashing is a very easy way to do that. It, of course, requires that the person originating the file provide that hash, but these days, if you're downloading an ISO download, you'll sometimes see that hash information right there on the download page. A lot of people might be thinking, what is that odd, strange, long number associated with it? That's exactly what they're doing there. They're giving you a chance to provide integrity to the information that you have downloaded. Next is a mobile phone has encrypted all data on the device. This is something we almost take for granted these days. We don't even know it's happening. These days, if you have an iPhone, you've got some type of Android device, by default, all of the data that is being saved on that device is being saved in an encrypted form. Very common to see on our standard desktop operating systems. With Windows, you have things like BitLocker, for example. So on your mobile devices, you also have a similar technology. And that uses a special bit of hardware on this device to make it very, very secure. That specialized hardware is often referred to as a secure enclave. This is a series of hardware, mostly hardware and some software, that is able to maintain the security of this piece of equipment, this piece of hardware. One of the challenges that we've had with desktop operating systems and other operating systems on a laptop is that if you have physical access to the device, you could effectively get access to the data. But if you're encrypting that data as it's written to the drive, or you're encrypting that data as it's written to the storage device, you don't have that problem. So Secure Enclave is the technology built into these mobile devices that can provide that functionality. It gives you additional security so you don't have to worry that your data is going to get out and other people would get access to it. And our last description is all manufacturing equipment is connected on an isolated network. This is something that's very common to see, especially in large environments. You have very expensive equipment or equipment that really should not be accessed by others outside of your organization. So we will very often segment that particular equipment off to their own network. We will make sure that it is completely separated with what we call an air gap, which means there is no direct connection between that network and the network that you might be able to access from the internet. This means that if somebody does gain access to this corporate network, they would still not be able to gain access to that very critical manufacturing environment. I see this a lot. I've had customers that were power companies. Power companies do this all the time so that the power piece of it is completely separated from the corporate network side of things. Just makes perfect sense and very good security rules, very good security best practices. So those are our descriptions that we used. Obviously, there were some that we did not use. We did not use root of trust. Root of trust, it describes the beginnings of a security infrastructure. For example, if you have a public key infrastructure that has a security authority, a CA that you've created, that CA would be your root of trust. You have other hardware components that could also be described as root of trust. That is where the trust begins. You don't have security without trust. We use trust all the time with security, even something you do every day. If you've installed a new app on your phone, if you've installed a new application on your laptop or your desktop, a new game was released, you added the new game. A new word processing was released, you added or updated the word processor on your device. You're trusting that that software does not contain anything malicious, which isn't necessarily true 100% of the time. But we do have that trust that is there. So this is the idea, is being able to understand where that trust begins, and that describes a root of trust. Static code analysis is often done by developers who want to test their code before releasing it into the public sphere, into the world, and they want to be sure that they haven't missed anything with security. So static code analysis, a very useful tool, but doesn't describe any of the descriptions that we have here on the screen. And lastly, input validation, also an important consideration, often used by developers, where they are looking at all of the input coming into their application and ensuring that that input that's being added doesn't contain anything malicious or cause any other issues. So that is exactly where we focus with these. Our descriptions: a spreadsheet hidden in a JPEG graphics file is obfuscation. A text message requesting payment of a non-existing traffic infraction is smishing. An administrator confirming the integrity of an ISO download is using hashing. A mobile phone encrypting data on the device is a secure enclave. And all manufacturing equipment connected on an isolated network is segmentation. There are your choices. That's what the things that we worked on for this study group's performance-based question. It's almost like getting 5 or 6 questions all at once on one screen and working through all of them. It can be relatively time consuming, so make sure you check the clock and look at and maintain your timing on this exam. Being able to manage that clock is incredibly important for all of these. And if there are any of these technologies you didn't recognize or perhaps didn't get correct, make sure you make a note of that. You can go back and study those once we are done here today. Let's shift back to some multiple choice questions. The next question I have for you is this one. A security analyst discovers a lost, unencrypted external flash drive in a public hallway. Which specific state of data describes the information residing on this component? Is that data at rest, data in transit, geolocated data, data in motion, or data in use? It's got to be one of these, right? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Again, please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow those links. A lot of people locking in quickly. It makes me feel like we're gonna ace this one. We're gonna do really well on this one as I'm watching the numbers go up here. I try not to peek at the answers that you've submitted so that we can all be surprised at the same time. This is something that might be considered, especially if you're working through all of this. This might be also a consideration when people are finding lost, unencrypted external flash drives. What can go wrong, really? Of course, we're going to plug that in. No, don't do that. Do not plug in the found unencrypted external flash drive. Probably not a great idea to be able to work through that. In this case, we're not so much worried about the security risk of this drive, more interested in the data that's on this drive. The question again asks, a security analyst discovers a lost, unencrypted external flash drive in a public hallway. What specific state of data describes the information residing on this component? Is it data at rest, data in transit, geolocated data, data in motion, or data in use? Let's close our poll, and we can see that 83% of you say the answer is data at rest. Again, we had a big answer for this one. That was data at rest. We had 6% of you said data in transit, 5% of you said geolocated data, 4% said data in motion, and only 1% said data in use. Well, with 83%, I think data at rest, not only our popular winner, but it's actually the correct answer as well. That is the state of data associated with this. CompTIA wants you to know the 3 states of data that we were using. Data at rest would be data that is stored on some type of storage medium, a flash drive, a hard drive, a CD-ROM, a DVD-ROM, a backup tape. Anything that is stored data is data at rest. Data in transit would be data that's going across the network. So if you were transferring information from one system to another and you're watching those packets go across the network in real time, that is data in transit. You will often hear data in transit referred to as data in motion. Those are the same thing, just different terms that we use to describe those. Geolocated data, not really a thing. I sort of made that one up because I ran out of options here for states of data, but geolocated data doesn't really apply to the data storage or the type of data that we would have. It's not a state of the data that we are using. And data in use would be data that is actively being worked on, generally in the memory or CPU of a system. So as you're bringing up a spreadsheet and you're using that spreadsheet, that is data in use. When you store that spreadsheet, it would be data at rest. When you email that spreadsheet to someone and it's going across the network, that will be data in transit or data in motion. So those are the different states of data. Of course, we have those states of data and a description of each of those on our course, the SY0-701 course, section 3.3, and the name of the video is aptly named States of Data. So make sure you are familiar with those different states. I do give you descriptions in that video of the different states, what they mean, how they're used, and perhaps even what they might look like. So you can get a feel for what those might be. 83% of you guys crushed that one. Let's do another question and see how we do. See if you can have the same success rate. Let's keep it going with this question that asks, a packet capture shows administrative browser sessions to a router are using an insecure protocol. Which protocol should be implemented to ensure these remote sessions are encrypted and secure? Are they, would it be, is your choice SSH, IMAP-S, WPA3, HTTPS, or SFTP? It's just a bunch of letters thrown together. Does it mean something? I think it might. A packet capture shows administrative browser sessions to a router are using an insecure protocol. Which protocol should be implemented to ensure these remote sessions are encrypted and secure? Is it SSH, IMAP-S, WPA3, HTTPS, or SFTP? If you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Again, we got a lot of answers coming in quick. It's not a guarantee we got all of these right. It just means we got them all quick. We have had questions that have been completely wrong that everybody answered, and questions completely right. I'm hoping we got completely right on this one. I have good feelings about this particular security question to see how we do with this one. This is also an important consideration. Not every protocol you use on a network is inherently secure. Just right out of the box, there are a number of protocols that, in fact, are very insecure, but very often there are alternatives that you can use that will make things much more secure, or even as secure as we can possibly get for this one. So let's talk about this one. This question again asks, a packet capture shows administrative browser sessions to a router are using an insecure protocol. Which protocol should be implemented to ensure these remote sessions are encrypted and secure? Would that be SSH, IMAP-S, WPA3, HTTPS, or SFTP? It's got to be one of these. But what did you choose? Let's find out. We'll hit their stop button down here, close our poll, and a little bit of a mix on this one. We did get a majority, though. 57% of you say the answer is HTTPS. 30% of you, though, say the answer is SSH. We also have single digits. We have 7% with WPA3. We've got 5% with SFTP, and we've got 1% with IMAP-S. So that is the different, at least the two options that people chose from a numbers perspective. Most of you chose the 57% of you with HTTPS. And if you did choose that one, you got that one absolutely right. That is the answer that we were looking for in this case. Hopefully that's the answer that you chose, but a number of you didn't. Just under half of you chose something else. Our challenge in this particular case is that we have a situation where we have, we're working in a router, maybe a firewall. And this is, you'll notice we're in this device doing configurations, and we're using a browser to do this. Very often, especially on our modern systems, you have these fancy browser front ends that allow you to get into the system and configure it, which means that you are most configurations in this using a browser are using HTTP. That's what a browser uses by default. We could probably have an arm wrestle conversation about, no, this could be SSH running in a browser session. It could be a telnet running in a browser session. I think we could probably, no mention of that in the question. So don't add more to the question than what it really needs to be. Because we're using a browser, you can assume that we're using HTTP. There are a number of protocols I mentioned that might start off as being insecure, but there's a secure version of it. And there's a list of these on your Security Plus exam objectives that you need to know. Make sure you are familiar with all of these as you go through it. Let's step through a number of these so you can get a feel for what they are. For example, if we look at telnetting into a device, telnet has that console-based front end, but it's very insecure. Anyone capturing packets can see everything happening. So instead of using telnet, you would instead use SSH. If you're doing web browsing, as we did in this question, you're in a browser. That browser by default might be using HTTP. And if you want to make sure that it is encrypted, it would be HTTPS. That is the Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. Email client access, you might be running IMAP on your phone or your email client. It's a much better idea to run IMAP-S. That message protocol secure makes sure that the information is decrypted and encrypted as it's going across the network. We also have file transfer. FTP is a very common and very easy to use file transfer protocol, but everything is transferred in the clear. If somebody captured all of your packets, they could very easily put that file back together and they would have a copy of it. But not if you use SFTP, the secure version of this. That makes sure that all of that data continues to be encrypted as you're sending it across the network. And that was the scenario that we had here where we were doing browser-based communication and you were able to see everything going on. I have an example of this, by the way. So here's a browser-based packet capture. this browser-based packet capture is using port 80, and it is sending this information. In fact, you can see up here that the destination port here is 80. I know it's very hard to read. It's very small. Port 80 right there. And then as we look at the packet capture, notice everything under Hypertext Transfer Protocol is all in the clear. I can see the post command. I could see the header information. I could see cookie information associated with this, all in the clear. I can view everything. Now, if you were to do this same packet capture, but instead you used HTTPS, it would look like, well, not look like that. It would have all of this information. There we go. All that information in this oddly shaped X, that or this view that we have there, is one that would all be encrypted if we were using HTTPS. You would see what port number was in use, but that was basically it. That's the beauty of encrypting this data as it's going through the network. And in this case, if you're using a browser, but you want a secure communication in a browser, you indeed would use HTTPS. And that's what 57% of you chose. If you want to learn more about it, it's in my video section 4.5. The video name is Secure Protocols. Well, as you've already seen on the screen, I have taken everything from every video, everything about secure protocols, everything about understanding states of data, everything about everything listed in the exam objectives, and I put it into a single document. These are notes from my video courses that contain all of the text, all of the important graphics, all of the tables. They are my set of course notes. They are available in this physical edition that I'm holding in my hand right now. You can see all of the details there. I also have the digital edition that is a PDF. Let me give you a view of what that looks like on our screen. This is obviously exactly the same thing as what you're seeing in this piece of information. In fact, if I go to one of the first pages in this, you can see it's got the graphics, it's got the other information in it. And indeed, we have exactly the same thing in our course notes as well. You can see the tables that are there. You can see the graphics are available. So obviously they're identical in content. They're just different in how they are presented to you. These are available in this PDF format that you can purchase right away and download immediately. If you purchase the physical edition, we print these on demand, so we will be shipping this to you, but you get a copy of the digital edition at no additional charge. So that way while you're waiting on this to arrive in the mail, you can download immediately the digital edition and start reading right away. That's another great thing about this video course, is that although it is presented in a video form, there's so much good information in there. And this is one way that you can collapse all of that information into one single document and have everything available to you at a glance. Those are my course notes, and they're available on my website. You can find out more about those at professormesser.com/701cn. This is also a great way to support what we're doing on the site. Obviously, our entire course, every video, every minute of every video is made available publicly for free for the world to watch. And by purchasing these course notes, our practice exams, and more, you help support what we're doing there. And we thank you so much for that ongoing support. Let's do another question. More questions. Next on our list is this question that asks, a specialized IT team is tasked with simulating the methods of real-world attackers to identify and exploit vulnerabilities. Which of the following would best describe this group? Is this white team, blue team, purple team, green team, red team? It's got to be one of these, right? What team are we on? It's a color. But what color is it? A specialized IT team is tasked with simulating the methods of real-world attackers to identify and exploit vulnerabilities. Which of the following would best describe this group? Is it the white team, blue team, purple team, green team, red team? Take your pick. It's got to be one of these, right? And you'll be able to make that work for you. If you think you know the answer, please go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You instead want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Let's see how you do with this one. Should be pretty good to step through and understand. Got a lot of answers coming in on this one as well. This should be pretty good. And if you are someone who is working in the world of security, there is a lot of nomenclature. There's a lot of terms that we use. And if you walked into a room and everybody was talking about the colors of teams, you may be wondering, wait, I thought our colors were garnet and gold. I thought our colors were blue and orange. I didn't know there were other colors that we needed. No, it's a different team. It's a different configuration. So make sure you understand how these colored teams are used in the context of IT security, and you'll do just fine. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a specialized IT team is tasked with simulating the methods of real-world attackers to identify and exploit vulnerabilities. Which of the following would best describe this group? Is it the white, blue, purple, green, or red teams? Let's find out, shall we? We'll close our poll. Boom. 80%. Very big numbers again. Say it's the red team. But we did get a double digit. 12% of you said it's the white team providing that. We have 5% that said the blue, 2% said purple, and 1% said green. Well, in this case, with 80% of you saying red, we sort of have to go that direction, don't we? Where we're working in an offensive way. We are attacking this network, but internally. We're attacking it with a way that might provide us with a more focused and attack view from the inside so that we can really test what's going on. And if you're part of that team, it would indeed be the red team that we're working through. The red team is the offensive team. They're performing penetration testing. They're trying to break into systems to see just how vulnerable they might be. That is in context to the defensive part of your organization that is trying to protect against these attacks. That would be the blue team. So you've got two sides. One group's trying to attack, the other team is trying to defend, and that's where we try to figure out just how secure these systems in this network might be. Now, there may be a group that integrates these together. You'll sometimes hear of the purple team. This is a team that is doing both attacking and defending at the same time. So not incredibly specific. Ideally, you would have some very specific limitations as to what you're doing, but not everybody has an enormous IT organization. Not everybody has tons of people where you can separate off into different teams. Sometimes you bring all of those together to work in tandem because the head count that you have doesn't allow you to have individuals that all they do is red team work and all they do is blue team work. It might make sense to bring those together. So that gives you some perspective anyway on things that might be useful to understand, especially in the world of penetration testing, testing your own network to make it more secure, and making sure that the types of patches and the security systems that you have in place are working as you planned. This can be very, very difficult to do that sometimes. This is a very important part of the IT security infrastructure. Let's do some more. How are we doing on time? We're doing very good on time. So let's sneak in another question, shall we? We've got more on our list. This next question asks, a technician has successfully installed a new version of an application, but it failed to launch because a required Windows service was not also updated. Which of the following would best describe this change management challenge? Would that be legacy support, dependencies, scope creep, deny list conflict, or version control? When you are faced with managing a change control process, the clock is ticking. You get a certain window that you're able to make this change, and you need to make it as quickly as possible, or at least within that window time frame, because you're simply not allowed to make changes outside of that window. So in this particular case, you've been tasked with installing and updating this application. It's kind of a normal change control. But then when you start the installation process, it stops and says, we can't install because you didn't install a required Windows service. You didn't update that Windows service as well. So that's a challenge. That's a problem. And it's an important consideration because you probably should have tested that prior to the window opening. That's one of the things that becomes very much frustrating when you're in the middle of everything. There's so much planning that takes effect prior to doing a change control. When I'm working on change control of my website, I'm performing a ton of tests. I install it on a practice machine on a non-production device. I test everything that I can. I make sure the website looks okay. I make sure everything's working as I would expect. During the installation of that, I make backups prior to doing the install So all of this work, hours and hours and hours of work go into this process of upgrading. And then when I perform the upgrade, I click the upgrade button. It upgrades in 15 seconds and we're done. So the upgrade process, relatively easy. The planning process takes quite a bit of time. And that's just a normal part of change control. That's what we do in those scenarios. Let's look at this question, though. A technician has successfully installed a new version of an application, but it failed to launch because a required Windows service was not also updated. Which of the following would best describe this change management challenge? Would it be legacy support, dependencies, scope creep, deny list conflict, or version control? Let's close our poll. 67%, a good number, say our answer is dependencies. We also have 23% that say the answer is version control. And then we have single digits. 7% said legacy support, 2% said scope creep, and 2% also said a deny list conflict. What's hard to argue with that 67% of you that chose dependencies, that is the answer that we were looking for, because dependencies, as we've already seen here, can really catch you when you're trying to perform an upgrade or change to an existing system. The dependency means that if you want to finish and complete task A, you would have also needed to complete task B before you do that. Both of those are dependent on each other. So it's something you commonly see if you look into the information and the logs in Windows. It might even show you in the services app, for example, if you bring up a service like this one, this service is showing an application identity service, and it says that it needs an app ID driver, it needs cryptographic services, and it needs remote procedure call or RPC running. That because this service depends on the following system components. That is the dependency for this service. So if you tried to start this service and the app ID driver wasn't running, the cryptographic services were not running, or the RPC service was not running, then the service itself would not be able to run because it relies on all of these to be able to work. Windows also tells you that the following system components also depend on this service. So it's actually a chain of services that have to be running just to get certain applications to run properly. You really need to understand these dependencies if you're performing an update, because that will be incredibly important. You'll start the update, the window is open, it's 3 in the morning. That was the only time the window was available. You woke yourself up, you get to its console, you log in, you start the upgrade, and immediately it fails because nobody thought that we would also need to upgrade a different service. And you can't really necessarily do that in the moment. You haven't tested that service. You haven't gone through change control for that service. That's something that simply is not available. So it's effectively a failed opportunity where you're not only not upgrading an application that people need to use, you've also lost some sleep. And that's not a situation you want to be in either. So make sure you're familiar with this. Dependencies, I'm showing you this one in Windows, but dependencies happen in any operating system. Linux is even more challenging at times to be able to find the dependency, figure out how to install it, because it may be a very different dependency. And Linux can be challenging sometimes to get all of the ducks in a row just to make sure that application can be upgraded. Just another challenge. That's why you make the big bucks. That's why you want to get in IT. If it was easy, everyone would do it. It is always a challenge, but if you plan properly and you test properly, these dependencies are not going to be a problem for you. So that is the answer we were looking for, was dependencies in this case, although 23% of you said version control is what you should have had in place. That is the challenge we have here. Well, in this particular case, version control is referring to keeping different versions of the same application organized. Very commonly used by application developers, but it could also be used by people that are installing new applications as well. Maybe simple as keeping different versions of the application available so you can install a previous rev. When you're working as an application developer, you may be creating many different versions of some code. So it's useful to lock that code in so that you can see the process that you're going through. This makes it very easy if you run into a problem that you can go back to a previous version, or you can pull information from a previous version that was working and put it into your existing version. Version control becomes very important from working from an application development perspective. but not exactly what we were looking for in this case. Version control would not have helped us because the application that we needed to upgrade is not one that we had considered previously. Others that are there, we've got a lot to work through, especially if you're someone who is working on older systems. You're trying to install an update to Windows XP. I see you there. You think people aren't running Windows XP? Of course they're running Windows XP. There are certainly systems out there in a corporate production environment that are running out-of-date operating systems. We refer to these as legacy systems. They may not even be out of date. They just may be really, really old. They may still be supported by the manufacturer. That legacy support is one that sometimes requires a little bit different approach than our modern operating systems. That wasn't the issue that we found here, but it's one that you should certainly be aware of, and it is a change management challenge that you have to consider, especially if you're in a very large environment. Not the one we were looking for here. 7% of you chose legacy support. 2% said a deny list conflict. This is especially useful or can be seen when you're working through a firewall. You're working through some type of access control list, ACL, where you're trying to perform a function, but you're locked out from performing that function. If you're not an administrator on an operating system, you may be denied from performing upgrades. That would be an example of a deny list conflict. And then lastly, we have a scope creep. Scope creep, it's sort of the aftermath of this, but if you were someone who is upgrading a system and then somebody goes, oh, while you're upgrading, could you also upgrade this other application that we have running? And while you're in there, could you also maybe add some more memory to this server? We need more RAM in the server. So could you do this all at the same time? Suddenly, a change control for one software upgrade is turned into a hardware change and the change of yet another piece of software. That means that we probably need to approach this in a more methodical and controlled way with change management rather than just throwing things on in the last minute. Hey, we're just going to upgrade memory. What could go wrong? We're just going to change this one application. What could go wrong? Famous last words, of course. So make sure that you don't run into that situation. That would be a big problem when you're working through those issues. The issue here was that we had one application or service that was dependent on something else, and that would be a case of change control management and the dependencies associated with that. Yet another reason to test your change before moving it into a production environment. I know we're hitting kind of the top of the hour. Let's see if we can get in a couple more questions, shall we? I think we've got time for that. Let's do another question in this case. This question asks, a group of individuals has successfully defaced a major corporation's homepage to post messages protesting the company's environmental record. Which of the following would best describe this threat actor? Is this organized crime, hacktivist, shadow IT, nation state, or insider threat? If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. As always, please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. We're going to go in and look and see which one of these threat actors we need to know. This might be good as you're getting through all of these. This is also a good time to see how well you know some of the other answers. All of the answers here are in the official exam objectives, so make sure you are familiar with all of these topics here as well. It might help you quite a bit if you're trying to learn more about how this all works together. So take your time, make sure that you break out exactly what these are, and maybe that can help you as we're working through all of the issues associated with this. Maybe this might be something you're familiar with. And these threat actors, of course, they're in the very beginning of the exam objectives. Maybe you've already seen these. This might be pretty good. If you're familiar with these topics already, might help you as you get into the exam. And of course, threat actors is something we are commonly seeing mentioned today. There's a lot of cybersecurity in the news these days. You'll certainly hear some of these terms being used. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a group of individuals has successfully defaced a major corporation's homepage to post messages protesting the company's environmental record. Which of the following would best describe this threat actor? Would it be organized crime, hacktivist, shadow IT, nation state, or insider threat. I could almost fit three or four of these answers in, but only one best describes the threat actor, and it's what 93% of you chose. The hacktivist is what we were hoping to see. That's someone who is performing these very illegal attacks on these services, but they feel that they are doing it for a good reason, an activist type reason to be able to get in there. And since they are an activist who is hacking, it is a hacktivist. See how we did that? We're really not in the world of subtlety in cybersecurity, are we? We're just going to cram a couple words together. It works perfectly. Hacktivist is what we were hoping to find. And indeed, in this case, it is. Now, the thing is, we have already gone through this, and messages have been posted. The website has been defaced. This could potentially have been organized crime if it was a website that organized crime wanted to keep offline. The real key in this question, of course, is that the messages that were posted on the website were protesting the company's own environmental record, which doesn't really sound like organized crime. That sounds more like an activist type of view. So that's exactly where we would go from that. We have 4% that said insider threat. This could have been an insider. It certainly could have. Someone could have access to the web server. They can circumvent or gain access with existing authentication credentials. Certainly could have happened. But because it is already being critical of the company that owns the server, probably is not someone internal that has done this. Certainly there are people working internal that may not have the best interest of the company in mind. But the question here is asking which of the following best describes this threat actor, and hacktivist is a much better description than an insider threat. Nation state, we haven't really seen a lot of nation state hacking go on recently, have we? We've seen a lot of nation state hacking going on recently. And we can talk more about that in the after show if you want to talk about that one. Nation state would be instead of a corporation or an individual hacking, this would be a country, a government hacking another organization. So something that doesn't quite apply to the question that we have here. And a shadow IT describes a group within your organization that isn't going to the normal centralized IT department. They're doing IT things on their own, often without any authorization, and very often without any type of security controls associated with it, making it incredibly dangerous for the organization. But in this particular case, this is not the situation that we're in. This would be one from an activist. So the hacktivist would be the right answer for this one. If you are someone who is finding someone attacking a system and they're doing it for a philosophical reason, they're trying to get a particular thought or idea across, they're trying to disrupt or get revenge on an organization, that's exactly what we're looking at here. It very often is external, but as we've already mentioned, could be somebody inside the organization themselves. And they might have a very cursory understanding of security, or they might be very well established and really understand what they're doing. So very often, if somebody manages to get into a system and they're already disrupting and modifying a corporate website, they probably got some skills. So that might be a good one to work through if you're someone who is concerned about what type of sophistication they might have. They could be relatively sophisticated, and that's why we need to have a better security for all of them on this. But hopefully that could give you some perspective of the things that we're working through. But I think that as you are going through the process of understanding more about where the attacks are coming from, a lot of these attack type threat actors will become more obvious, and it'll be something that is more second nature, I think, than what you were looking at here. Well, we've done a lot of new questions in our study group today, but I'd like to give you a different kind of question, one that comes directly from my practice exams book. I wrote this practice exams book because I went around the internet to look at some of the questions that you might get from both free sources. Also looked at some commercial sources as well. And what I found surprised me, quite honestly. There was a lot of questions on the internet that were relatively simplified, that didn't really give you a perspective of what a real question on the exam might be. I also found that a lot of the questions I found online were just wrong. I'm not sure who wrote them or how they wrote them, but they were answering questions that weren't ever asked, or the answers that they provided weren't quite spot on with what the actual answer should be. Also found a lot of commercial pieces of practice exams out there that were asking questions from previous exam versions, and the topics were already removed from the latest. So they're asking you questions about things you've never seen before, and that suddenly you're supposed to somehow know what that is. The reason you've never seen it is because it's no longer in the exam objectives. So I often have people come to me and say, those questions were hard. Like, they weren't hard, they were wrong. They were out of scope. They were unnecessary. So what if you had a set of questions that were written to have a similar look, a similar style, and a similar feel to the actual exam questions, and every question is written with the latest objectives in mind, and you would get my practice exams book. So let's do a practice exams book, be able to look at it. I have a question for you from my practice exams book. I guess it would be good if I brought that up. This is a question A57. So this is from the 3 practice exams, A, B, and C, that are in my book. This is question 57 from practice exam A. And this is obviously the digital edition that we're looking at on my screen. This is a PDF. You can, of course, get the physical edition as well. And just like the course notes, when you purchase the physical edition, you get the digital edition that you can download immediately at no additional charge. This is also, you don't see it here, I guess I can scroll up, but it's on page 20 of my practice exams book. And this question asks, a manufacturing company would like to track the progress of parts used on an assembly line. Which of the following technologies would be the best choice for this task? Would that be secure enclave, blockchain, hashing, or asymmetric encryption? Now, this is a PDF, so you can make annotation to this. If you have a stylus, you can write on the screen. If you've got your mouse, you can highlight different things. You can maybe check into and choose different options on your screen. You can write on it, I guess, with the mouse. Doesn't really work very well if you try to do that, but at least you understand that you can make notes and you can save this PDF with your annotations so that later on when you load this back up, you can see the annotations that you have made. This is also a great way to find the answer and step through each one of these, because there's other questions on this page. This happens to be one here at the bottom. And you'll notice that if you just wanted to know whether the answer is A, B, C, or D, you could go to page 33. As I mentioned before, we're on page 20. And if you want a detailed answer and overview, you go to page 95. One of the things about PDF is you don't want to just keep scrolling through this book, wasting all of your time scrolling. So what I did was I put some quick buttons, some quick links right here. So if you were to click on where it says the details, page 95, and you click that, it goes to page 95. So you don't have to scroll anywhere. Try to make this easy on you. And of course, there's the question at the top of your screen. And the answer is B, blockchain. And of course, I explained to you why the right answer is right. Now, if you already knew the answer was blockchain, good for you. That is good that you got the question right. But very often as you're going through a practice exam, you will get questions wrong. And one of the things that I always get frustrated at when I get a wrong question is it never explains to me why the wrong answers were wrong. But in my book, I take every single incorrect answer and I give you documentation on why I believe the wrong answers are indeed wrong and why they would not be the correct answer for this particular case. So you can see why secure enclave is not the correct answer, why hashing is not the correct answer, and why asymmetric encryption is not the right answer. And if you didn't understand any of the question, you can go down here to the bottom where I have a QR code and a hot link right on the screen that will take you to the video associated with this particular question. It's from Objective 1.4, and the video name is Blockchain Technology, so that you can use either your camera, if you have the physical edition of the book, those QR codes are, of course, in the book. They're listed in there. If I find a page with the QR code, there they are. And then, of course, on the PDF, you can just click it. It takes you right there. Since this is a PDF, you may not even know their PDFs have a back button. Mine, of course, has a back button in it. Yours probably does as well. You click the back button, and we're back to where we started, and we can go to the next question that's on our list. Those are my practice exams books. I have them for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. We've got a lot that we go through on our website with practice exams. You get free practice exams every day with A+, weekly practice exams with Security Plus, weekly practice exams with Network Plus. The Security Plus book, though, is one that incredibly popular, And hopefully it's helped you a lot as you're going through your studies to know what the right answer might be for some of these complex technologies, especially as it associates with the official exam objectives. This is exactly what might help you. If you want to know more about it, go to professormesser.com/securitype. For those of you that are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would like to send you an email that certifies that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that CEU is you would follow these instructions. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us form, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put March 2026 Security Plus. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, Security Enclave Blockchain. Those are the super secret code words of the month, Secure Enclave Blockchain, or some combination of those. I think I even said 3 different things just by saying that. As long as it's close, you win, you get it. So that's the way you would all go through the process of that, is understanding more of it. Those are my super secret code words of the month. You can submit those to me. It takes me about a week to turn these around, but you'll get an email that's from me that has been digitally signed that certifies that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. So make sure you follow those instructions and you will have earned exactly that CEU. Also let you know that I've been talking this whole time about the official CompTIA exam objectives. Some of you may have never even heard these objectives before. This is a bit of a challenge sometimes. So I really recommend you go out to professormesser.com/objectives and download the latest ones. That page that is on professormesser.com has a list here of the objectives. I actually give you direct links to A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus objectives. And I have a graphic on the screen because it takes you to a page and it may not be very obvious where the objectives are. There's a red box on that page. That's what you're looking for. So scroll down to the red box, put in your email address, and that's where you need to go to get those. If you don't see the red box when you click that link, pardon me, we're going to, one moment. Okay, so if you go to that page for Security Plus, you can then scroll down and that red box should be there. I've already put in my email address, so it just shows me the exam objectives that are there. That would be a great way to earn those. But if you have any type of filter, if you have JavaScript disabled, if you are blocking certain things on your page, if there's any type of filtering, you may notice that that red box is not there. And that's why I put on this page that you may need to enable cookies, disable pop-up blockers, or remove other filters to see the red box, because if you don't do that, you just won't see it. The objectives tell you everything you need to know for the exam, by the way. If you've not downloaded and used these objectives, everything you need to know about the exam, it's in these objectives, bullet by bullet breakdown, detailed overview, to the point that if you know every bullet that is in this document, you're going to ace your exam. You're going to crush it, because they stick to this list almost exclusively. 100% of your exam is probably coming directly from this document. So if you know the document, you're going to be Security Plus certified. It really is sort of that easy to make it happen. Hopefully that's something you can be familiar with and have some understanding of. It's going to help you a lot. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. That is where we sit here. Now, of course, we do one of these study groups every month. If you want to know when our next Security Plus study group is going to be, you can go to professormesser.com/calendar, where I have a list of the latest that are going to be there. Sometimes these dates will change. Currently, our next Security Plus study group is on April the 22nd. Our next A Plus study group is on April 6th and 9th. Our Network Plus study group on the 14th. So make sure you understand where to go to see those at professormesser.com/calendar. If I do have to change these dates, and sometimes I do, I change it in my calendar first. So if you're going to that link, you know that you have the latest list of these times and dates. I also have this same list over on our Discord. There's an events channel on our Discord. I also put them in there and keep those updated as well. Hopefully that's something that you can work through. But of course, now that we're through the first half of our study group, I want to remind you that we're not done yet. We have our after show. I've been asking you questions this whole time. Now's an opportunity for you to ask me questions. They can be questions about technology or anything else. You're welcome to submit those at any time. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock those in. That should be something that might help you as you're going through and understanding more about the exam itself. Also, keep in mind that we're over on Discord and we're not doing a live stream. professormesser.com/Discord. Our daily or weekly pop quiz questions are available at professormesser.com/X, professormesser.com/Facebook, and professormesser.com/Instagram. We also have our YouTube channel where our Security Plus and all of our courses happen to be. You don't have to register. There's nothing hidden behind a paywall. Everything's out there and available for you to watch at any time. We also have our exam hacks book. We've got our discounted vouchers and more available at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, our course notes are out there as well. You can get to all of them from the main menu of the Professor Messer website. Well, that brings us to the end of our first hour, but stick around. We're going to have a lot more that we're going to go through. Stick around. We're going to go through our after show in just a moment. Stay where you are. Thank you for joining us in this first hour, though. We could not do this without you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. All right, let me take a sip. And let's think about now some questions. This should be a good idea for the things that we are doing, is to really think about what questions you would like to ask of me. This is also built into that same front end that you saw previously. You might have noticed that we had a screen that said that you could submit questions for the second hour at any time. And you can do that from that same link that we've been talking about so far, professormesser.com/QA. There's a little tab at the top of the page where you can submit questions. And then I'll go through these questions on our list. I've got them all in front of me. We'll sort of sort through the questions that you might have here and see what other things we can find. You can ask questions about information technology, about technology in general, about security, about networking, about anything relating to IT. You could also ask questions about anything else. If you have questions about the weather, if you have questions about lunch, I'll try to answer. Maybe I don't have answers about lunch, but we can certainly ask about those and being prepared for them. There are a lot of questions that have come in about the exam itself. I'm more than happy to answer any of those that I can. But this is a really good example of you asking whatever comes to mind that might be very useful in your role or future role in information technology. And I'll give you my perspective of someone who's been working in the field for my entire career, from system administration, network administration, security, next generation firewall expertise, the things that we've done in the field, the things that I've seen on the different organizations that I've visited. We can talk all about those. I do have a lot of stories going back, and especially from a security perspective, some of the things that I've seen on companies' networks. Let's start with a question that is from Kyle, who asks, hey, Professor Messer, I've been taking your practice exams in preparation for the real thing tomorrow. Oh, it's tomorrow. Kyle, we're sending good thoughts. Good feelings are going out. An aura of success surrounds you. I was curious about how fast I should pace myself through the questions. I usually finish with around 38 minutes left, and I'm worried I rush through the exams too quickly. I think I do a similar thing. I rush through the exam very quickly, probably because I have such anxiety when I sit down for the exam. I am very, very nervous about the exam when I sit into the exam room. I usually go to an exam center. I try not to take exams at home. There's just too much going on. And if you were to look at the studio, I can't take an exam in the studio. There's too many screens here. They would cancel it before we even got started. I'd have to go to a separate room, maybe with a laptop. But that's not something I want to do. There's too many things that can go wrong for me, and I'm already worried about the exam as it is, so I like going to an exam center. When I go to the exam center, it's a little bit easier for me to get into the exam, to sit down and start everything. But there's still a lot of anxiety. It's very hard to read the exam, in fact, and I try to rush through the exam as quickly as I can. Now, if you find yourself at the end of the exam with 38 minutes left, that's a pretty good number. The exam itself is 90 minutes in length. and usually people go right up to the wire. But if you're someone who can get through and parse the information and get through those questions very quickly, you may find yourself with a good bit of time left over. And I tend to find myself in that same position. I tend to find myself with a good bit of time left over right at the end, either more than 10 minutes, certainly, when we're done going through each one of those questions. So at least I'll give you my perspective of what I do when I'm faced with more questions on the exam at the end. Whenever I'm going through all of those exam questions and trying to figure out what do I do here, one of the things I use heavily on the CompTIA exams is the flag option. It's a mark option right at the top. There's a checkbox right in the upper right of the screen. And if you're looking at a question and you think you know the answer, maybe you're 90%, you think you know what the answer is, or 75%, maybe it's a half and half thing. 50%, I'm not sure, but we're going to answer that. I'm going to go with that for now. And I really highly recommend, as you are going through these questions the first time, even if you're not 100% sure of the question, you might be even 0% sure of the answer that you're putting in, pick something. On these exams from CompTIA, if you do not answer anything with the question, you're not penalized. They don't take points away from you, but you also don't get any points. And for a multiple choice question, there's a chance you could get the question right, even if you don't know the answer. So pick something, pick your best guess and put that down. But what you might also want to do is click the mark button at the top. That puts a little flag, a little notation with that question that shows that it is a marked question, and then go to the next question on your list. When you get through the entire exam, it will present to you a page that shows all 90 or so questions that are on your exam, and anything that's marked will have a little M next to it, a colored M, so that you know how many of these. When I finish my exam, there's a lot of marked questions. I use the marking feature, maybe too much, but I mark it if I'm not 100%, I mark it. That's my own personal strategy. So at the end of the exam, I have a lot of marked questions. But because you've gone through 90 or so questions, what you find is that questions that you hit earlier in the exam might help you remember or might even directly reference topics that are covered in another question. So you effectively have the exam answering questions for you from other exam questions. It happens all the time. So this is a good way to take advantage of that, is to have those marked, so that if you get through the exam, you're like, oh, now I understand what that original question was like. You can go to your final page, go back to that one that you marked, go directly to it, because at that point you can jump anywhere in the exam, at least with CompTIA, and you can go back to that marked question, and now you know exactly what it was. You can really either keep the answer you had or change it to the one that you really think it is. You can unmark it and then go to the next marked question on your list. So that's my personal strategy, is going back and forth that way to the main view, because I really feel that at the end of the exam, I'll have at least 10 minutes to do that. Even if I got to the end of the exam and I had 2 minutes left, there's no way I'm going to get through all my marked questions, but at least I marked something. I gave it my best option. I didn't leave anything blank. So you've got about 3 or 4 really good tips right there from an exam taking perspective, and some of the things that I use when I'm going through this. Make sure you take advantage of those. There's also, if you take the exam at home, there is a whiteboard that you can bring up and make notes on. You can type into it. So if you find information on your exam that's important, you might want to put it on that list. Just a little note taking you can do. In an exam center, they tend to bring you a laminated sheet of paper and a very badly mashed in tip of a dry erase marker. That's what they'll give you. I have taken my own dry erase marker to exam centers and given it to them and saying, can I use this? They look at it and go, oh yeah, you can use that. And so just so I have a good pen that I can write with and make detailed notes during the exam itself. They're just going to bring it out and erase it when I'm done anyway. So it usually is not a problem in bringing your own dry erase marker. Maybe that's something, if you're not planning to write anything, maybe that's not a big deal for you. At least you've got the choice. You can at least run it by them and see what they can do for you. Other things that I really work on, if I have that much time left over, let's say you didn't mark anything on the exam. Let's say you've gone through the exam and you're good with all the answers you put on. You're fine with them. I'd say you go back through and you read through them one more time. 38 minutes left in the exam. That's some good time. Don't wait. Don't just hit the submit button. It's your chance now because you went really fast through the exam. If there's 38 minutes left, you just crushed this exam. But it could have, and I've done this myself. So I'm giving you this perspective from my own exam taking, is that I like to read through every question again, not just the marked questions. I go through all 90 questions again, just reading through them. And there have been times when reading through the second time, I missed a word the first time through. I missed, and it's an important word. I missed the word not. Which of the following would not be the thing? Like, oh, wait, this is a completely different question than what I thought it was originally. My question is wrong. There's the right answer right there. That doesn't happen a lot, thankfully, and you probably shouldn't happen a lot with you. I tend to be that person who says, if you have a gut feel, if you don't know the answer, you just have a gut for what you think it is, I think you go with that. And if you go back to that question, you may be wondering, did I really choose the best answer? I say you stick with the original one. Unless, of course, something else in the exam has hit a particular synapse, has fired that piece in your brain. You're like, oh, wait, I know this is completely different now. Let's change that. So use the exam experience to go back through the questions. You got 38 minutes left. Why not? You paid for it. Use it. So go back through and just read them. If you're happy with it, just click next, click next, click next. Just click all the way through. You may not change any questions, which is also fine. That's a very good use of that 38 minutes. Even if you don't change anything, that's still a very good use. Make sure you take that opportunity to really check your answers. Hopefully you've well passed the top score that you need to be able to pass the exam. But occasionally it might come down to one or two questions. If that's the case, this might be your opportunity to refine what you think those answers are, just so you can do a better job with finding out and getting through the exam. This is not a race. You're not trying to get through it the fastest anybody's ever done the exam. If you have time left over, use that time. Do not misuse the time. Don't just throw away all this time they're giving you, especially if you finish early. What a luxury. Not everybody's able to do that, by the way, and I recognize that. You kind of have to plan your clock. The clock is always on the screen. It's always ticking, so you'll always know how much time is left. Make sure you do the time management you need to use to be able to get through the exam, regardless of how much time it might take. Let's keep going through this list. Let's talk about this one. This is a common question. This is from Lindsay, who asks, what's the best way to break into cybersecurity job? The barriers of entry, or at least everybody wants 3 years of experience. What is that about? And this is something that I think the internet has done a very bad job of marketing IT security positions or security positions in general. It is a very attractive career option. Everybody wants to get into IT security. In the movies, it's hyper interesting. They make it this very quick hack into the firewall, enhance. They go through this whole process. It's very Hollywoodish. In real world, of course, it doesn't happen quite like it does in the movies, of course. But there are cases where you might need a bit of knowledge to get into the world of cybersecurity, of IT security. And in fact, IT security is not an entry-level type of position. But if you look at the internet and the marketing that organizations do regarding cybersecurity, you think that right out of school, you can jump right into a security job. And they try to market to that. They try to market on the popularity of security and somehow make you feel that you're going to get a job right out of school that may be security related. When in reality, IT security positions require quite a foundational knowledge to be able to apply and be ready for a security role. In IT security, we're doing tons of work on operating systems, whether it's Mac OS, Linux, Windows, mobile operating systems, portable devices. A lot of different operating systems are in use. And if you're getting into the world of security, you need to understand the security differences between all of those different operating systems. Not only that, you need to know how to use all of these different operating systems because you need to understand the patching process, the security enhancements, the security features of these operating systems. They're going to be a lot that you need to know just at the OS level. Along with that, if you're in the world of IT security, you're dealing with virtual private networks, VPNs, especially client-based VPNs. You're also dealing with IPsec VPNs, which would be normally site-to-site VPNs. You need to know about how to configure and set up firewalls. There's tons of rules and ACLs associated with that. You need to understand how to scan for malware. What about log file consolidation and reporting? You know, all of this information is relating to integrations into the networking side of things. There is perhaps as much, if not more, networking in the world of IT security than there is security. There is so much networking that we do. Just imagine planning and implementing a firewall. We have to somehow integrate it with your existing routed and switch network. Is this a multi-homed routed network to different internet providers, or does it go to the same internet provider? Is there dynamic routing or is there static routing? Do you have one firewall or do you have two that are working either as an active passive or an active active? Because both of those configurations will require a different set of engineering for both of those. So this is the world that you get into that many people don't realize, that you can't simply jump into a security role in an organization. They want people that know operating systems and that really know networking, and not just know them, but have a level of expertise in operating systems and a level of expertise in networking. And that's why a lot of the roles that you see that are advertising for IT security and cybersecurity want you to have 3 years of experience or more to be able to even qualify for that particular position. Now, that doesn't mean that there are no entry-level positions in security, but I will tell you, there are not many. There are very few compared to the entire scope of roles that you would be qualified for coming right out of school. And that's why we often tell people, get that first job on a help desk, on a service desk, get a field technician role, get some type of traditional IT entry-level position, and then you're going to learn everything you need to know about operating systems, learn everything you need to know about security, and in about 3 years or so, you will finally have the knowledge that you need to move into an IT security position. So don't be concerned that there's nothing out there that can fit the role that you're looking for. I think it might be better if you have a better perspective on what roles would apply to you given the amount of experience that you have. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think the internet does a very bad job at this. They tell people you can go to a 2-week boot camp, you'll learn everything you need to know, and you can get that security job. In reality, you have learned something, I guess, in that 2-week period, but it's nowhere near what you would need to know to qualify and have the experience that you would need to get a role in IT security. So make sure that you have properly positioned yourself in the world of security, that you have built a strategy for getting to the role in IT security. And I highly recommend that. I loved my work that I did when I worked for a next generation firewall company. It is exciting to be able to plug into these networks, to be able to watch what's going on from a security perspective, to design and build and implement security designs in some of the largest networks in the world. That's a lot of fun, but you have to work up to that level. It's not something you can jump right into and suddenly you're designing security infrastructures. You have to really apply yourself, gain that knowledge, build that foundation, and effectively level up into the world of security. And if you do that, I think you're going to do just fine. There's plenty of time to learn. Just apply yourself, keep working at it, and you will get that position in IT security. Let's get more questions that have come in. This is from Lori, who asks, those performance-based questions, do they get partial credit on the exam? Oh, any point we can get, right? Any type of additional points to our bottom line would be super useful on the exam. And performance-based questions have so many different parts to them that wouldn't it make sense that they would be partial credit? I guess it could. Fortunately, CompTIA has provided a frequently asked question file on their website regarding performance-based questions. So if you search for FAQs and PBQs and CompTIA into your favorite search engine, you will get a page that says performance-based questions, frequently asked questions. Department of Redundancy Department. And the questions, there's a lot of questions on here, but if you scroll near the bottom, it says, is partial credit given if I answer part of a performance-based question correctly? Finally, we've got an answer to this. Let's see what the definitive answer is for partial credit. It says, there may be questions for which partial credit is offered. However, exam questions and their scoring are confidential, so no further information can be provided regarding which questions may offer partial credit. So there's your definitive answer on performance-based questions and partial credit, which is the definitive answer is, can you get partial credit on a performance-based question? And the answer is maybe. There you go. I hope that's cleared things up for you. It doesn't answer anything, does it? It doesn't help at all. The answer is we could, we might, maybe, sort of, but you'll never know anyway, by the way. The final score that you get on your exam is a single score. They don't break it down by question, and they don't tell you if you get partial credit. So in reality, it doesn't matter if they offer partial credit or not. You'll never know. You'll have no idea whether you got partial credit. You'll have no idea whether you got full credit. You'll have no idea whether you got no credit, because there's no way to reverse engineer your final score. As I've often said, don't spend your time trying to reverse engineer the scoring system that CompTIA uses. You will not be able to do it. And ultimately, you'll never know how it was scored anyway. So instead of worrying about the scoring, worry about the exam objectives. The scoring is effectively just going to take care of itself. The score will be the score. The only thing you really have control over is your knowledge. Stick to those objectives, and then the score will simply turn out to be whatever it is. And I think if you do the right thing, you'll be just fine on that one. I did get a lot of questions that came in this time about what a future version of the Security Plus exam would look like. We are so far away from what a future version of Security Plus, maybe a next version of Security Plus. Right now, the current version of the Security Plus exam is the SY0-701. It's going to be around, this version that we're on right now is going to be around for more than a year from my expectation, based on the way that they've done this in the past, which means we'll still be talking about the 701 this time in 2027. So we're way ahead. We can't even look at that part of the exam. They will do sort of their normal update to this, because they update the exam about every 3 to 3.5 years. So they will do an update. There will be some new topics. There will be some old topics dropped. That's sort of the normal thing. We're already working on the next gen of the exam, but it's nothing that any of us have to worry about right now, thankfully. Stick to and concentrate on the SY0-701. We'll talk as we get closer to a retirement date for this, or we get closer to a release date of a new exam version. We can talk more about it then. And trust me, we will talk more about it then. I will have a full analysis. I'll be able to tell you exactly how much information has stayed in the exam, how much has been dropped, how much is new. You'll know everything you need to know. You just don't need to know any of that right now, because none of it will apply to you. And you got plenty to worry about. This is not something you need to worry about. Let me worry about it, and I'll let you know when we're able to make that happen. Just keep checking in with us, and you'll absolutely be ready to go. Speaking of exam objectives, and speaking of topics that are on the exam, and speaking of studying things that may or may not be necessary for the exam, let's look at this question from Manuel, who says, I feel almost ready to take the exam, but I'm intimidated by port number memorization. I can't seem to get traction memorizing many ports. How much of the test depends on port numbers, and do you have recommendations on getting past this hurdle? I sure do. Thank you for asking. I think whenever you run into a situation where you're wondering, do I need to know that topic? Do I not need to know that topic? This especially applies if you have any study materials from a different source than mine. You will find there will be questions that show up or topics that are covered that you weren't really expecting. And unfortunately, that's just normal, because a lot of the courses that I've run into do not have the latest exam objectives covered. And they are, in fact, will ask you a lot of questions about exam objectives that are no longer covered on the exam. And I've said it a million times already. Maybe we'll just tell you a million more times in this study group that you need to go to the objectives. CompTIA sticks to this objective list like glue. They go right here to this list. They do not deviate from this list. Very, 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 very rarely do they ever ask a question that is outside the scope of this list. And when they do, it is very often a question that is not graded. They put it in there for their own research. That's why I tell you, if you go to this list of objectives and you've gone through every one of these domains and subdomains, you've gone through every single one of these bullets, and you can explain to yourself or to someone else these topics. For instance, in section 1.2, for summarize fundamental security concepts, you need to understand confidentiality, integrity, and availability, or the CIA triangle. Non-repudiation, you need to understand AAA, which is authentication, authorization, and accounting. You need to know gap analysis, zero trust, control plane, data plane, physical security, including bollards, access control vestibules, fencing, video surveillance, security guard, access badge, lighting, sensors, and deception and disruption technology, especially honeypots, honey nets, honey files, and honey tokens. That is one section of multiple sections which have multiple domains associated with them. So this is just a series of bullets that we really need to understand just to cover all of the topics that could potentially be asked about information in this section. And once you're through with that one, you go to section 1.3. Explain the importance of change management and all of the things associated with that. Then go to section 1.4. There's more bullets and things, technologies we need to know. There's a lot here. We're not even finished with the first domain yet, and we've already gone through that much information. Here's the second page, second 2 pages, I guess, in domain 2, which is threats, vulnerabilities, and mitigations. Domain 3, security architecture. Domain 4, security operations. There's a lot of domain 4. And domain 5, security program management and oversight. And then finally, there is an acronym listed in the back for your reference as well. That's a lot of objectives, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics that you need to know for this exam. This is where you should spend your time. So let's look at this list and see how many port numbers are listed in here. Well, no port numbers there on the first 2 pages. Let's go to the next 2 pages. No port numbers there. Let's go to the next 2 pages. Nope. No port numbers on that one. How about the next? No, I don't see any in domain 4. No port numbers in the rest of domain 4. How about domain 5? Is there any port number? Nope. No port numbers there. So I went through the entire set of exam objectives. There's no port numbers. Why do people insist of learning port numbers in an exam that is not asking them to learn port numbers? I do not know. It's just been something we've run into since we've been doing Security Plus. So for 15 years, people have been trying really hard to study port numbers, but there aren't any here. Now, to be fair, in earlier versions of the Security Plus exam, I'm talking versions many versions ago. We're talking over 10 years ago. I think there were some port numbers on the Security Plus exam. Our current versions, at least in the last 10 years, have not had any port numbers on them. So my recommendation to anybody who says, what port number should I learn? My inclination is to tell them, how about none? How about don't study any? Now, I also recognize that there are technologies on the Security Plus exam objectives that tend to lend themselves towards already knowing certain port numbers. I'm not denying that. So if you go to the section on access control lists, for example, firewall rules very often have port numbers in them. I realize a lot of the newer firewalls, the next-gen firewalls, don't even use port numbers for the most part for application level rules, but they could. You could add port numbers to it. So there is some level of familiarity that would be nice relating to port numbers, but because they are not specifically listed in this, I think your better use of time would be to study things that would actually appear on the exam rather than to study things that aren't even listed on the exam objectives. Now, worst case, let's say you went through the entire Security Plus exam objectives. Oh, but this port number thing is really eating at you. It's driving you crazy. And you can't seem to get past the idea of really wanting to study port numbers for some reason. Well, if that's the case, I would highly recommend you grab maybe the Network Plus exam objectives or the A Plus exam objectives. There is a set of about 20 port numbers there that you need to know for those exams. I guess that might be a good list to study from. But again, since they don't give you a specific list, then I think that's one of those examples where it would be good to be able to understand more about how the ports would apply to that broader technology that is presented to you. And if you only have to know 20, you probably even know a lot of them. What's the default port number for HTTP? Everybody knows it's 80. What about HTTPS? Everybody knows it's 443. So there's some port numbers you already know. You already got them. And adding on the others is probably very minor. I think if you had the handful, if you had HTTP, maybe FTP or FTPS, SSH, and Telnet, maybe that's it. Maybe that's all you would really have to go through. Maybe another couple in there might be useful, but since they're not in the exam objectives, this becomes more of a where do you spend your time? Do you spend your time studying something that CompTIA has told you could absolutely appear in your exam? Or do you study something that's just in the ether that you've pulled out of the air that may or may not be on the exam? I know where I would spend my time. You have to decide where you would spend your time on that one. So I would say this is really up to you, but focus on the exam objectives first. Then if you want to add on other types of things, I don't know, to make you feel better about what's in here, then you can go outside the scope of the exam objectives. But even then, I don't think that's necessary. There would be so few questions going outside the scope of the objectives, if at all, that it would probably be a waste of your time. Stick to the objectives. The time you spend studying port numbers, you could have probably spent time studying 2 or 3 other bullets that are in this exam objectives. And I think those 2 or 3 other bullets have a better chance of showing up on your exam than anything relating to port numbers. So it's sort of a numbers game, oddly enough, with port numbers. But it is something that you might want to consider from a study strategy, just to make sure that you don't find yourself studying things that perhaps may never appear on the exam itself. Even if you take the Network Plus exam, it's surprising how little port numbers are on these exams. People spend weeks studying port numbers and in fact get one question about port numbers, which is about right on the exam when you look at all of the objectives overall. So it's about context as well. Another one of those things you might want to consider, especially if you're planning and you have limited time. Stick to the objectives. Don't worry about anything else. Don't let somebody drag you in another direction studying something that was never listed in the objectives to begin with. Let's keep going through this list of other questions. This is, I think, this is really why we were focused on this. If we look at, I think this is a pretty good one, because when I look at the industry in general, the Security Plus exam is considered kind of a de facto starting point for the world of IT security. There's a lot of technologies included in the exam objectives that are on a very broad scope. It really doesn't narrow down into any one thing, does it? It's just a very broad listing of technologies that you need to know, but it is a very timely and very accurate list of the technologies we tend to speak about when we're talking about cybersecurity on today's networks. So the question from Anonymous asks, does the Security Plus certificate apply to and help with security adjacent roles such as DevSecOps, cloud security, security automation, and AppSec? So a lot of these roles have sort of migrated over time. The terms that are listed here have different meanings depending on who you ask. Good example of that is DevSecOps. It's a developer doing security and also has some operations role associated with it, which, by the way, none of those things should be together. The developer and operations, I guess they are separated here by the security. Those shouldn't even be in the same sentence with each other. It is a lifetime of knowledge just to be able to do anything from a development perspective. It's also a huge amount of time to become very proficient in the world of IT operations. There's no way one person can do both of those. And in fact, what the industry has found is that we would have loved to have one person do that. Turns out it didn't work out so well. So what this tends to mean is someone in a security role who can script. That's what the industry has kind of evolved into, this DevSecOps thing. I think it was a role created by management to hopefully save some money. And what they found out is they couldn't save money that way. I think we're maybe doing the same thing again in the world of IT. We tend to have this cyclical role. Let's try to make up some security technology that's going to save us money. What? It doesn't? Oh, well, let's do it the way we used to do it. It kind of works through those roles. Cloud security, absolutely. Security automation. Security automation is sort of what we've been doing in security for the lifetime of security. I think it's interesting that a lot of organizations have suddenly now latched onto the idea of automation, when in fact we've been doing this forever. We don't need anything special to automate. This is why, for example, Python has become so popular. Most recently, when the cloud-based technologies emerged, we needed some type of scripting language that would allow us to automate across multiple cloud environments, multiple operating systems, and be able to have an easy way to have portability between all of those scripts in the different operating systems. That's Python right there. So we've already been doing security automation for a very, very, very long time, and even a more refined version of security automation, especially in the world of cloud computing and Python. So Security Plus, as you've already seen, has probably topics that touch on many of those different areas in the world of IT security. I used to travel from company to company. I'd visit 2 or 3 companies a day, usually very large organizations, talk to them about their security requirements, just talk to them about implementing new security technologies within their existing environment and what the planning and implementation of those might look like. And in some cases, I did the actual implementation of those. And that's a bit of a challenge because every organization's a little bit different in their security needs and requirements. Every organization is a little bit different in how their network is designed. There are different requirements and advantages and disadvantages for designing a security technology into those environments, and you have to be flexible enough to understand those. Security Plus does a very good job at describing so many different technologies that if you sat in a meeting that was talking about building out or implementing one of these new security technologies, you could probably keep up pretty well because you understand the terms that were being used. You understood the references to a CA signature or a certificate implementation, or being able to install a firewall and for what purpose, and do we turn on the intrusion prevention capability and what would that provide for us? You already know that because you've taken the Security Plus exam and you have at least a high level view of what those technologies bring to the table. You may not know how to turn that feature on inside of the firewall yet, but that's not what Security Plus is about. Security Plus is giving you the terms, the knowledge, and the implementation of these technologies that we can then use in more of a conversational role, and you will jump into that particular lake and start learning all of the other things after that fact. But you have to start somewhere. You have to get your primer. You have to get that foundation in place so that you have something to build on. You can't just walk into one of those meetings and people start talking to you about asymmetric encryption and the IPsec tunnels and how this is going to work. You'll be lost, but you'll be able to catch some of those terms because you were able to go through and understand more about how the Security Plus terms fit into that broader view of IT security in the enterprise. Something that might really help you as you're going through the world of IT, getting into this. This, by the way, is a common thing. When you walk into these meetings, you will never know everything. When I got into these, I'm spent years going from company to company to company, talking to some of the largest companies in the world with some of the biggest security requirements that you can think of. And very often in the meeting, they will ask a question that I had not heard before. This is very common. And as someone who is representing a particular product, I have to be an expert in what that product provides. I have to know every feature, every implementation, at least have some knowledge of how that particular feature is implemented and designed and applied. But you can't know everything. You can't know 100% of any technology. Nobody does. So this is one of those cases where sometimes you have to say, I don't know. Now that's a good question. Haven't heard that one before. I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I do know someone who will know the answer. Let me get with them. I'll get back with you. So let me get that, writing that down. So you want to know this. Did I write that down properly? Yes. Okay. I'll get back with you within the next 2 days. We'll have an answer for what that one might be. So those things are common. If you feel that you're in a meeting and you really know 99% of what's going on, that you knew every technical question posed of you, you could design this network at the drop of a hat, you understand everything about the configuration of what they're trying to do, you're probably in the wrong meeting. The world of IT is one that is going to constantly push you to learn more. And it's an opportunity to push you to learn more. The more you know, the more valuable you become. The more valuable employee, the more valuable technical person, the more valuable you are on the job market. And the more valuable you are, the more flexibility you have as to the places where you work, the things that you do, and how that particular role is designed for you. You have more flexibility being a remote person if you know more than somebody who knows less. You need to be in the office if you're somebody who's not very knowledgeable. But if you have a very specific set of knowledge, I worked with a lot of technical people that were super smart. They've been doing this for years, and they had this very core niche knowledge in a very particular part of security. And I'm thinking specifically, these were people I worked with at very large data and phone carriers. So if you think about mobile phones that we have, the big companies in the United States are AT&T and Verizon and Sprint, and there's a lot of big telephone companies, mobile phone companies in this country. So those organizations had people working for them that were so good at understanding how these technologies worked, that were very niche. That's a pretty niche technology, mobile technologies are. So they had the flexibility of working remotely because most of the time they were on the phone to somebody who was located either across the country or located in different countries. They couldn't travel to where those people were, and going into the office was sort of pointless because they were just going to be on their phone the whole time. Those are the types of roles that really lend themselves to be a remote position, which also gives you as an employee a little bit more flexibility and a little more comfort in your day-to-day work. But it took them years to accumulate that knowledge, to become an expert in that knowledge, and then to finally be able to use that in a role that would give them more flexibility. So I think that's where it's important to have the right perspective on these jobs. If you think you're going to come right out of college, you're going to get a role in IT security, and that role is going to be remote, that is really unlikely. There's not a lot of jobs out there, if any, that you might run into. But, and I get a lot of hate mail over this because I feel like people think I'm pushing them away from security. I'm not. I'm saying there is a pathway, and I want to give you that pathway. But there are people that rightfully will send me notes and say, you don't talk enough about entry level in security, because there are some entry level jobs. Yes, there is. There absolutely is. And I don't want to dissuade you away from those, but I want you to understand that there are so few of them that it is a very niche and a very small number of people who even have the opportunity to apply to those positions, because generally they're in something like a SOC, a Security Operations Center. And SOCs are, think of it as a help desk, but only for security related tasks. So this would really be with very, very, very large companies. But if you happen to be working in a very large municipality, you're in Atlanta, you're in Charlotte, you're in Washington, D.C., you're in Chicago, you're in Dallas, you're in L.A., you're in Minneapolis, you're in these big cities. If you have an NFL team, you're in a big city. Think of it that way. If you're in that big city environment, there probably is a big company that has a big office there. You've seen them driving down the interstate. Oh, that's a big building. Wow. Look, I wonder what they do there. That's where you should be putting in your resume, because they probably have a security operations center. And if you're able to get a resume in as an entry level into the SOC, you effectively become tier 1 or tier 7, depending on how they number it. You're the first tier of support for that organization in the SOC, meaning you're not the one solving the problem. You're more of a triage. They're calling you as the front end. You're handling the first level tickets. You're gathering information on the problem that's occurring, and then you're passing that off to the right people. It's kind of like a help desk. And I just described help desk, but only for security. That's what a SOC, that's what an entry-level position in a SOC happens to be. But here's what it gives you. If you're lucky enough to be in that particular role, you've now gotten into security at the very bottom of your career. Great place to be, because now you can be a sponge. You can start pulling all that information in. You can start gathering more information about how the organization works. That sometimes is one of the hardest parts of being in a help desk is, who do I even call for these types of problems? And you're now learning about the security technologies that are in use. You're understanding the challenges people are having with the next generation firewall that they're using, or with the SIM for reporting that you happen to be using. All of those things become really useful to learn sort of through osmosis. And if you are someone who does like to apply themselves, these people that you're working with in the SOC are having to come in on the weekends, on the early mornings to do some of the change control. This is a great opportunity to just surf along with them. And you might ask them, hey, I know you're coming in at 1 a.m. to do that firewall upgrade. Could I just mirror? Can I sit behind you and watch what's going on? And one great thing about this industry is most people in this industry like to help each other. We like to bring along people and have them learn this technology as well. So more often than not, someone will tell you, sure, come on along. And you can just watch what we're doing. I'll even explain it as I go so you can kind of see what we're doing. Is it extra work you're going to have to do, often unpaid? Yep, it is. Are you going to learn things you could never learn anything else? Oh, yeah, absolutely. And when a new role comes up in that department for someone who might fit entry level but have some knowledge, maybe that's something that you can apply for. Those are the things where you really have to think about that strategy, where I told you not a lot of entry-level positions in security, but you should set a strategy for getting there. And it can be a number of different things. You're not on a rail. There's not just a set, you have to do this first, then this second, this third, and you'll get a job in security. It doesn't work that way. Everybody has a different path they're going to follow. And it will really depend on the company you're with, the resources that are available, and how much you want to apply yourself. And I guarantee you, once you start applying yourself, spending your own personal capital on learning and evolving through the world of IT security, it's going to come back to you in spades. I assure you. This is one of the great things about security, and it has been for the longest amount of time and really for the foreseeable future. There's not a lot of smart people. There's a lot of open positions. There's a big need in the world of security. And as you've probably seen just in the last week or two, we need more people in security. We need a lot more security. We don't have enough because the world is an ever-changing place. It is a dynamic world where people are really going after you. I mean, there are people really wanting to take down your network. We often don't think of this in such personal, directed terms when we're dealing with security. We're thinking about what rules do we put in our next-gen firewall, and why does this IPsec tunnel keep going up and down? We're not even thinking about somebody wants to take down your whole network right now, but they do. So you do have to have kind of your head on a swivel, at least technologically. You need your head on a swivel so that you can really be prepared for anything that comes up. We just don't have enough prepared people. We need better technology. We need better people in the world of technology. This is the only way we're going to do it, is with you. So think about those things as well as you work through the world of IT, and you're thinking, why am I in this help desk? Why am I doing operating systems? Why am I doing password resets? What have I done with my life? This is not how you should be thinking. You'd be thinking, let's learn more about what's happening when I do a password reset. How do I apply this out? How can I build more on this operating system? How can we do some operating system upgrades? And once you learn everything you know about the operating system, now let's do another operating system. That's Windows. Now let's do Linux. Let's do Mac OS. That's Mac OS. Let's learn everything we can about Android and iOS. What about iPads? There's so much to learn just there. Now we can level up into networking. How do switches work? How do routers work? How I put them all together? What about wide area networks? What type of rules and what type of connectivity do we need? What about higher speeds? What about connecting all of these together? What about remote sites that have the same VLANs? What about IPsec tunnels? This goes on and on and on. That's just the networking piece of it. You could spend a couple years just doing that. Then you level up into security. So that's my approach, is you should have a realistic view of the world of IT security, but you should also start clawing at it, start building on it, start pulling yourself up, and you will find before you know it, you've already conquered operating systems. You've now you understand everything you're viewing in that packet capture. You're building out network infrastructure. You're connecting different sites together. Now it's time to get into security. So that's what I think you should focus on as well. I wish I could tell you, all you got to do is step 1, step 2, step 3, and you're done. It just doesn't work that way. You need to find your own path to get there. Everybody's path is going to be different. Some can get there faster than others just because of where they live or the jobs that they chose or the things that happen. This isn't a race. It's not a competition. Only people we're competing against is ourselves. So find your best path to get there. It's never as fast as you want, but it is something worth doing, and you will get there. You just need to apply yourself, set the strategy. You'll be there before you know it. I know it's top of the hour, but let's maybe fit in another question if we can, getting through all of these. I got a lot here to go through, a lot of great questions that have come in, and thank you so much for sending them in. I'm sorry that I just can't possibly get through every single one of these, but I think you recognize that. I think that's pretty obvious. There's only so much time available in the day. Let's keep going through this list. We talked a lot today about testing centers, what you can do at home. A lot of the people online, there are a lot of bad stories. If you go to the CompTIA subreddit, for example, it's really a lot of bad stories. And I think in some ways, it gives you some rose-colored glasses regarding the exam, that it's so strict that no one would ever take their exam at home because it's just going to be a failure every time. In reality, of course, we never hear about the completely normal and successful at-home exam sittings. We only hear about the ones that go badly. And there are things that can go very badly. And so I wanted to talk very quickly on this question that says, your thoughts on pros and cons between taking the exam in a testing center and online at home. Always wonder, what drink do you sip on during these study groups? What is this? Well, it sounds like it could be just a water, but it could also be scotch. I think water probably fits better in this scenario, though. Okay, last question first. Let's go to the first question last then. Pros and cons between taking the exam in a testing center and taking your exam at home. Two very different environments, obviously, but it is important that you choose the right one. I highly recommend you read through the rules for taking your exam at home if this is something that you're considering doing. The challenge, of course, is when you go to a testing center, there is a very detailed set of rules that a testing center has to apply and use to be able to give these exams. There has to be some type of recording system. They have to have lockers or something so that you can't take anything into the room. There's certain things they can give you to take into the room and certain things you can't take into the room. Can you have earplugs or not? These are all listed out in these testing centers, and it's the same in every testing center, or it should be. The challenge, of course, is that as you are working through these in a testing center, and there's other people in the room. So a lot of people use earplugs. You get the piece of paper to write on in a testing center. You don't get that at home. And it might even be a more familiar environment, because if you go to the same testing center over and over and over again, it becomes a little more comfortable as you're in it. If you're working through this at home, think about your home environment. How do you make your home as secure as a third-party testing center? Well, it's impossible to make it completely the same from a security perspective, but they do have security built into the exam itself. For example, before you're able to sit down and take the exam, you have to take pictures of your entire testing environment where your computer is going to be, the screen that's in front of you, what's on your desk, what's on the walls around you. And you may find that the proctor for the exam says, nope, you got 2 screens in front of you. The rules say 1 screen. That's in the rules. You might not even realize it. That's why I say make sure you read the rules. So important. And during the exam, they're watching you on the video. And if you drop something on the floor, which I don't know what you would drop because you can't have a pencil or anything or a pen during the exam. There can't be any writing instruments, but say you need to scratch your leg. So you go just outside the scope of this. And then if you do that, they will end the exam right there. You went outside the camera. They can't see you. You must be trying to cheat, I guess, or certainly they are concerned about that. And so they will end the exam right there. If you are in, if you're in a home or an apartment with other people, they can't be in the same room as you. And if they walk by and walk behind you, like they're walking through the room, the exam's over, that you're done. If there's a lot of weird noises going around you, they will end the exam right there. You can't talk. You can't put your hand in front of your face. So if you're looking at a question, you're thinking, thoughts and pros on taking the exam in a testing center and online home. You're just resting your face right here and you're thinking, thoughts and pros on taking it. They will tell you on the screen, don't cover your mouth. Do not talk to yourself. Now, to be fair, you can't talk to yourself in a testing center either. There's other people in the room. That's not allowed. But you can't cover your mouth because now they don't know, are you saying something into a recording device and you are recording information from the exam? Maybe I am. Maybe am I even talking right now? Or is this a recording? Who would know? That's why. That's why they have that set up that way. So make sure that if you do plan on taking your exam at home, that you've read through all of these very bad situations that are on the CompTIA subreddit where the exams have gone badly, so that you won't make the same mistakes. And that's one of those things that people don't realize. You could start the exam. You're on the first question. Somebody in your apartment walks through. They cancel the exam. That's it. You just paid for an exam that you just now have not been able to take. You were able to take the first question. You don't get that voucher back. You don't get to reschedule. It's over. The investment that you have made into that exam is gone. You have to buy a new voucher. You can't even take a retake because the retake is only valid if you legitimately failed the first time. If your exam was stopped, that retake is also gone. These are important things. You have to read through the requirements for the vouchers and the retake vouchers. It's all listed there in the terms and conditions. Make sure you are aware of them. We always say, did you read the fine print before you signed the document, before you agreed to the contract? This is one of those examples where it really would behoove you. It would really be smart of you if you would read through the terms and conditions. Not only would it make you a better test taker, but now you really do understand what's good and what's bad, what you should do and what you shouldn't do during the exam itself. Pretty important. This is an interesting one. Somebody in the chat saying, I had proctors hassle me remotely when I was looking down because I was writing out a math equation on my dry erase board. You don't get a dry erase board if you're taking the exam remotely. In fact, if you had a dry erase board, you probably they should have canceled the exam right there and thrown it out because you're not supposed to have one. It's in the rules. They give you an online note-taking feature so that you're not looking down, you're not writing anything. Another example of how you have to make sure you stick with the rules or things that are unexpected could happen. Really you're saying it's for an on-view math test, not an IT test. So for CompTIA, you don't get to write anything. So again, if you're looking off to the side, if you do this during your exam, you're on the camera, but you're looking off, they'll cancel your exam. You're done. It's stopped right there. So I think that's pretty important if you're someone who's working through the details of these exams, that you understand what you can do, what you cannot do. It's going to be incredibly important. Remember, by the way, that you can still reschedule your exam. I think it's 24 hours before, which is really good to be able to have that. 24 hours before your exam, you could change the date to a future date. Some people do this as a motivation. They will start their studies and they will plan to take the exam 3 months from today. They'll book the exam. They'll buy their voucher and book the exam in 3 months. All right, you're on the clock. Let's go. But as you get closer to that 3-month period, let's now push it out another week. Let's push it out another 2 weeks. You can adjust those dates. So that's in your court. You now get that advantage of being able to move things around if you feel that you need a little bit more time. Might be worthwhile to consider that as well. A lot of the rules and regulations, they are all listed out on the links that you'll find for registration on the CompTIA website. You would find those links under login.comptia.org. Once you log into your CompTIA account, all the links are there to schedule an exam, get information about an at-home exam, frequently asked questions. They're all there. So you will be able to go through it and understand the details of it. This is why I highly recommend, if the option is available, to take the exam in a testing center. There's very few problems you can run into there. Nobody's constantly looking at you, worrying on what you're looking at, worrying that you moved out of, you moved in your chair a little bit. That's not what you'll run into in a testing center. Whereas at home, a lot stricter with how you're able to move, where you're able to look, what you're able to do. I know it's different. I know, and it seems almost unfair, but how else are you going to have a secure testing environment in a home which inherently is insecure? It's good that we even have the choice. And if you are someone who is hours away from a testing center, your only choice might be to take the exam at home, because you're not going to drive 4 hours to take an exam and then drive 4 hours to come back home when you could be sitting at home to take exactly the same exam. If you plan on doing that, just make sure you have read over those rules, you understand the regulations, you understand the good, you understand the bad. And if you do that, you're probably not going to have any problems at all with your exam. It's going to go without a hitch. You'll be able to get through the whole thing, and you wouldn't have had to drive 8 hours in a day just to make that happen. It's your decision. You can decide which way to go with that. It's good to have options, though. And I think both of those are very good options and might apply differently depending on where you are and what your goals are. We just want you to pass that Security Plus exam. Find the one that will give you the best opportunity to pass. I'm happy with whatever you choose in that scenario. Well, I think that brings us to the end of another study group session. If you're someone who is worried about the Security Plus exam, you're looking to get more information, you want to prepare yourself even better, you might want to look at when our next study group is going to be. You can always find the next one at professormesser.com/calendar. And of course, we have our entire course available, our course notes, our practice exams, downloadable videos, and much more on our website that you could choose from. We do one of these study groups every month. Our next study groups will be at the beginning of April. It's April already. Beginning of April, we have our A+ study groups during that first full week of April, Network Plus the week after, and then Security Plus after that. There's lots of ways we could go there. I'm going to be on Discord after this. If you're someone who's working on your exam, a lot of folks head over there after we're finished with our live streams. It's a great way to meet other people who are also studying for their Security Plus exams. Thank you so much for joining us on the study group today. We look forward to seeing you again on the Security Plus study group. Thanks, everybody.